You won't believe what this determined CEO went through. She secretly boarded a plane owned by her own airline just to experience the service as a regular passenger. But what she encountered next will leave you stunned. Watch until the end to uncover the powerful journey of resilience and transformation. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Amara Johnson, a strong, intelligent woman and the CEO of Skyflyer Airlines, sat in her office on the top floor of the company's headquarters, gazing out the window. Though her airline was known for its premium service, recently, Amara had been receiving waves of negative feedback from passengers regarding the cruise service. This wasn't just disappointing, it was a blow to her reputation and the company she had built from the ground up. Amara knew that Skyflyer was an extension of herself, a symbol of the values of fairness and respect she always prioritized. Every passenger boarding a Skyflyer flight deserved to be treated with respect and dedication, yet recent customer feedback painted an entirely different picture. Reports of discrimination and cold attitudes had Amara worried that the culture she had worked so hard to build was beginning to erode. To find out the truth, Amara decided to board a flight herself, experiencing it as an ordinary passenger without revealing her identity. She dressed down, choosing a simple outfit that was far from the usual powerful CEO image. She couldn't help but wonder if she truly understood what her customers went through on a Skyflyer flight. With a mix of anticipation and determination, Amara left the headquarters and headed to the airport alone, without her usual entourage. At the check-in counter for Flight 437, she noticed the occasional scrutinizing glance from the ticketing staff and a few nearby passengers. Her distinct appearance might have made her stand out, but Amara remained calm, blending into the crowd. She carefully observed every detail, from the ticket agent's attitude to how they interacted with other passengers. For the first time in years, Amara felt like an ordinary, perhaps insignificant passenger in the vast airport. She passed through security, receiving a few curious glances from guards, none of whom recognized the owner of Skyflyer. Instead, they looked at her with a hint of suspicion, as if evaluating whether she truly belonged there. This feeling, while unfamiliar, was exactly what Amara wanted to experience, to understand how her passengers felt. With an economy ticket in hand, Amara made her way to the boarding area, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. She was determined to verify everything her passengers had reported, from service quality to crew attitude. This wasn't just a flight, it was a personal mission, a field survey to gain a deeper understanding of her company's service culture. When the flight was ready to depart, Amara boarded Flight 437, blending into the bustling crowd. Unlike previous flights where she was warmly greeted by the crew and attendants, this time Amara was just an ordinary passenger sitting in economy class, unnoticed. She found her seat and stowed her luggage in the overhead bin. As she was adjusting her things, she noticed a flight attendant named Sophia approach with a warm smile for other passengers. But when Sophia's gaze fell on Amara, the smile vanished. "Ma'am, is this your seat?" Sophia asked, scanning her from head to toe with a cold expression. Without waiting for an answer, she glanced at Amara's ticket, raising an eyebrow as if to confirm Amara's rightful place, but with a skeptical attitude. Amara politely smiled and nodded, handing her ticket to Sophia without further comment. Although a bit surprised and uncomfortable, she brushed it off, assuming it might just be a momentary lapse in professionalism by a new employee. However, her discomfort grew as she realized that Sophia's attitude wasn't just a passing moment. After glancing at Amara's ticket, Sophia turned away without a word, leaving her without the customary greeting or smile she offered to others. Sitting down, Amara began to suspect that this might not be a coincidence. She wondered if Sophia judged passengers based on appearance and attire, and her unease slowly turned into quiet disappointment. As the cabin prepared for takeoff, Amara watched Sophia closely, noting how she served other passengers. With each person, Sophia smiled warmly, enthusiastically helped with luggage, but whenever she approached Amara, she seemed to deliberately pass by, almost ignoring Amara's presence. Amara decided not to react immediately. This was an opportunity to see her airline service attitude firsthand. Once all the passengers were settled, Amara quietly continued observing Sophia and the other attendants. There seemed to be an invisible wall between Amara and the crew on this flight. A heavy sadness mixed with confusion weighed on her. Was this how her employees treated an ordinary, unremarkable passenger? If so, then perhaps customer feedback wasn't just complaints. It might actually be the truth. Amara held herself steady, keeping her expression neutral to hide her discomfort. She knew this journey had just begun, and to understand the problem, she needed patience and continued observation. Amara leaned back in her seat, keeping silent, her hand gripping the armrest to contain her rising discomfort. From the start of the flight, Sophia's cold attitude became more apparent. Each time Sophia pushed the service cart down the aisle past Amara's row, she avoided eye contact, as if Amara didn't exist. Sophia was warm to all other passengers, smiling, chatting, and helping them choose drinks and snacks. But each time she neared Amara, she would pass her by, blatantly ignoring her. Finally, when Sophia came back with the drink cart, Amara decided to speak up. She wanted to see if Sophia's neglect was a mistake or intentional. "Excuse me," Amara said politely but clearly, "could I have a glass of water?" Sophia stopped the cart but didn't display the same enthusiasm she showed other passengers. She turned to Amara, not with a polite smile but with a cold look, as if Amara was inconveniencing her. Sophia looked Amara up and down, her gaze carrying a subtle but unmistakable disdain. She responded curtly, "We'll serve you when we have time, ma'am. There are other passengers to attend to first." Amara felt a quiet disappointment rise within her. Sophia had not only bluntly refused but had spoken with a hint of sarcasm, making Amara feel judged and belittled. She nodded slightly, containing her frustration. For now, all she could do was sit back and continue observing. Though a bit saddened, she reminded herself that showing her displeasure now would only complicate matters. She resolved to stay calm if she wanted to accurately assess the situation. When Sophia walked away, Amara sat quietly, observing how Sophia and other attendants served the passengers. Each time Sophia returned with the cart, she continued to smile and greet other passengers warmly, attentively asking if they needed anything more. But when she approached Amara, she pretended not to see her, passing by without a word or gesture of care. By the third time Sophia passed over Amara without any greeting or attention, her indifference and coldness were too obvious to be accidental. Other passengers received thorough service, while Amara sat there, feeling isolated, as if excluded from the basic courtesy every passenger deserved. It wasn't just Sophia. Now the other attendants began showing a similar attitude. At one point, when a male flight attendant named Daniel walked by, Amara tried signaling for a glass of water. Daniel saw her but merely glanced her way and continued walking without stopping to help. Amara began to feel she wasn't just being overlooked, but actively isolated, as if the crew deemed her an undeserving passenger based on her appearance. As the flight settled, Amara felt a growing sense of shame and helplessness. The coldness and disregard she endured from her own crew were no longer things she could ignore. She wondered if, without her status as the powerful CEO of this airline, ordinary passengers had to endure similar behavior on flights like these. How many people had felt the same sense of disregard and exclusion as she now did? This thought fueled Amara's determination. She leaned back in her seat, continuing to observe with a different resolve in her gaze. She did not show anger, only kept a calm exterior, watching every move of the crew. Amara knew this flight still held many discoveries, and she would need to endure a bit longer to gain a complete picture of the state of the airline she had poured her heart into building. Amara took a deep breath, striving to stay calm. She sat there, enduring the stinging pain of the crew's cold, indifferent attitude at her own airline. Even now, she just wanted to wait patiently and observe to truly understand the issue. But when Sophia returned with a drink tray, Amara felt the situation might be worse than simple indifference. Sophia pushed the cart slowly, glancing around, showing warmth and enthusiasm to every passenger she served. She carefully asked each one what they needed, smiling brightly and helping them choose a drink. Watching Sophia's genuine care for everyone else, Amara saw the stark contrast in how Sophia behaved with her. When Sophia finally reached Amara's row, she stopped, looking at her with annoyance, and suddenly tilted the tray so that a cup of hot coffee slid off and spilled directly onto Amara's face. The pain hit immediately, spreading from her face down her neck. Amara gasped, taking a deep breath, bringing her hand up to soothe the burning sensation on her skin. Passengers nearby turned to look, some covering their mouths in shock, others staring wide-eyed, while some merely whispered or glanced over before turning away, as if not wanting to get involved. What shocked Amara more than the burn was Sophia's reaction. No hint of remorse. Not a word of apology, only a slight sneer, as if she had succeeded in handling an unwanted passenger. "Oh, sorry," Sophia said coolly, though her voice was laced with sarcasm. "Seems like you're a bit clumsy." Her words felt like a taunt rather than an apology, and her cold eyes looked at Amara with such contempt, making Amara feel more belittled than ever. Amara closed her eyes for a moment, trying to stay composed and keep her emotions in check. In a calm voice, she asked, "Could you bring me a napkin?" Sophia looked at her, hesitating for a brief moment, then shrugged indifferently. "Sorry, we're out of napkins. You'll have to manage on your own." She didn't give Amara a chance to respond, turning and moving on to serve other passengers, leaving Amara wet and in pain. Amara felt her face flush, both from the burn and the quiet humiliation Sophia had purposefully inflicted on her. This wasn't a simple act of oversight or indifference. It was blatant contempt, a silent message that she wasn't worthy of even the most basic service. The injustice and humiliation felt more painful than the burn on her skin. Around her, a few passengers looked over with sympathetic glances, while others avoided eye contact when she tried to catch their gaze. Amara felt keenly the sense of isolation, as if she was left alone in her humiliation. No one spoke up or seemed willing to help. They were just silent witnesses, leaving her to handle the situation herself. Some may have thought it unnecessary to speak up, or perhaps they simply didn't want to get involved. Amara sat back, coffee soaking her face and neck, seeping into her clothes, making the burning sensation even worse. She felt deeply the sting of being disregarded, a feeling she perhaps had never truly experienced before. Her patience at this moment wasn't out of weakness, but a deliberate choice, aiming to uncover the full truth. She wondered how many ordinary passengers had endured such unprofessional and prejudiced treatment. Sitting in silence, Amara felt the pain and humiliation shift into a deep disappointment. This wasn't just a personal experience. It was an awakening about the service culture of the airline she had placed her trust in. Amara resolved to endure a bit longer, to continue facing the cold and contempt from her own team, to truly understand the deeper issues within this service system. Inside, Amara sensed a profound shift, a resolve not only to address this incident, but to reform the entire service culture of Skyflyer Airlines. Amara knew that from this moment on, this flight wouldn't just be a journey of service evaluation, but a journey opening up a much larger mission. But as she started to think of the actions she would take after the flight, Sophia returned, this time with Daniel, another flight attendant, by her side. Both approached Amara with a look of displeasure, appearing to have decided to escalate things even further. "Ma'am, we've received complaints from other passengers that you've been causing a disturbance throughout the flight," Sophia said, her voice cold and a touch mocking. "To ensure everyone's comfort, we're asking that you keep quiet and follow the crew's instructions. Otherwise, we will have to take serious action." Amara looked up at Sophia, a mix of surprise and anger. She could still feel the burn from the spilled coffee and now had to face an unfounded accusation. She knew she hadn't done anything wrong other than asking for basic service. But Sophia's words made her realize Sophia was deliberately making things up. "I only asked for a glass of water and a napkin after the coffee spilled on me," Amara responded calmly, trying to keep her tone composed. "I haven't caused any disturbance or affected anyone else." Daniel stood with arms crossed, leaning toward Amara, looking at her with disdain. "We have a responsibility to ensure the safety and comfort of all passengers," he said. "If you don't cooperate and keep disturbing others, we'll have to inform the captain to take appropriate action." Amara was shocked by the threat from her own employee. The sense of isolation became even more pronounced, as she noticed a few surrounding passengers beginning to look at her with cold indifference, as if they'd been influenced by Sophia and Daniel's words. A few minutes later, Sophia returned with Mike, the flight captain. Mike, a tall man with a stern face, approached Amara's seat, his expression less than friendly. His eyes swept over her as he spoke firmly. "We've been informed that you're causing a disturbance on this flight and not following crew instructions," he said, his tone sharp and decisive. If you don't cooperate immediately, we'll be forced to take stronger measures. Amara kept a calm gaze on Mike. She knew that protesting would only worsen things, but she couldn't accept such blatant false accusations. "I've been sitting here quietly," she replied, her voice low but firm. "I haven't done anything to cause a disturbance, and I have followed all flight rules." Yet her explanation seemed meaningless to Mike. He signaled to Daniel, and before Amara had another chance to speak, Daniel quickly took her arm, pulling her up from her seat. "Please sit quietly and follow all our instructions," Daniel said, his voice filled with arrogance. He tightened his grip, forcing her back into her seat with enough force that she couldn't resist. "If you continue with this behavior, you'll face even more serious consequences." Amara felt humiliated and powerless. The coldness and distance the crew had shown her went beyond unprofessionalism. It was an outright insult. She sat down, bitter resentment welling up inside her. Under the gaze of the other passengers, she could see clearly that many looked at her with a mix of pity and doubt. Some people looked away, unwilling to get involved, while others whispered among themselves about the disturbing woman. Their silence only deepened her sense of complete isolation. Mike stood there for a moment, his gaze cold and judgmental. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Amara with a feeling of intense humiliation and the pain from Daniel's grip. Amara knew that any reaction from her at this moment would likely be misinterpreted, so she kept her composure. She sat silently, letting the humiliation and injustice build upon her patience. This wasn't just a personal slight, but a bitter betrayal of her trust in her own crew. As the CEO of this airline, she had once been proud of the values she built: fairness, respect, and customer care. But what was unfolding before her eyes revealed a frightening truth about the service culture at Skyflyer. Amara knew that reacting angrily now wouldn't help, so she resolved to remain patient to see the full extent of this truth. Inside, she felt a powerful determination forming. Her mission was no longer just a flight to inspect service, but a journey to confront and resolve deep-seated, possibly toxic issues within her own system. But just when Amara thought things couldn't get any worse, the humiliation escalated to an unimaginable level. Not long after Captain Mike returned to the cockpit, Sophia and Daniel appeared, this time with cold, hardened expressions, as if they were ready to publicly make an example of Amara. Sophia stopped right beside Amara's seat, leaned down with a fake stern face, and loudly announced so that surrounding passengers could hear, "Ma'am, we continue to receive complaints from other passengers that you have been causing a disturbance in affecting their comfort. To ensure the safety of this flight, we're asking for your immediate cooperation." Amara looked up, angry but trying to stay composed. Sophia's accusation wasn't just fabricated, it was a public shaming meant to humiliate her. "I am not disturbing anyone," she replied, keeping her voice steady though her heart was pounding. "I have been sitting quietly, doing nothing but requesting the basic service any passenger deserves." But Sophia paid no attention to her explanation. Instead, she glanced at Daniel, giving a signal, and both of them stepped back, making way for Mike, who had left the cockpit again and approached with a tense look, his eyes full of authority. He looked Amara up and down, his gaze cold and judgmental. "We've warned you," he declared, his voice loud enough for the surrounding passengers to hear. "If you continue refusing to cooperate, we will be forced to take more severe measures." Amara looked Mike straight in the eye, showing no fear. "I haven't done anything wrong," she said slowly, her voice low but filled with resolve, despite trying to stay calm. "I'm simply requesting the basic rights any passenger should have. I have not caused any disturbance, and no one here can claim otherwise." But Amara's words seemed only to solidify Mike's resolve. Without giving her another chance to speak, he signaled to Daniel, and in a flash, Daniel grabbed her arm, forcing her to stand. "Ma'am, please sit still and follow our instructions," Daniel said arrogantly. "If you continue resisting, you'll face more serious consequences." Amara was stunned, unable to believe what was happening. In an instant, she felt a deep sense of helplessness and humiliation, as if she had become a criminal in a public place. Looking around, she searched for any sympathetic gaze, but all she saw was the indifference and coldness of strangers. Some passengers looked at her with a mix of curiosity and annoyance, while others turned away as if she was a problem they didn't want to get involved in. As if to add insult to injury, Mike gestured to Daniel, who, without hesitation, pulled a pair of handcuffs from his pocket. Amara's eyes widened as the cold metal cuffs tightened around her wrists, the pain immediately rising as the handcuffs pressed into her skin. A deep sense of helplessness washed over her, a feeling she had never experienced before as a woman of power, now sitting silently among the crowd, handcuffed like a common criminal. People around her glanced over, some passengers covering their mouths in surprise, while others whispered to each other, pointing with curiosity. Not one of them stood up to defend her, and none showed even a hint of sympathy. A middle-aged man seated in front turned slightly, giving her a look of disdain mixed with intrigue, as if savoring a show. Standing nearby with folded arms, Sophia wore a smirk of satisfaction, appearing to relish Amara's public humiliation, as though bringing her down gave her a sense of joy. Daniel stepped back, observing Amara as if he had just completed an important task. Their cold expressions only made Amara feel even more humiliated and pained. She realized that to the crew, she was merely a troublesome passenger, undeserving of any respect. Sitting there, handcuffed, Amara not only felt the pain from the metal cuffs, but also from the coldness and lack of humanity from the very crew she had trusted. Each passing second became heavy and stretched endlessly. She tried to stay calm, breathing deeply to keep her composure, though anger and hurt were welling up inside. But she knew that any reaction would only worsen the situation and give the crew more reason to look down on her. As the plane approached its landing point, Amara looked out the window, her heart filled with a mix of pain and anger. She swore to herself that this would not be the end. Those who humiliated her, those who dared to judge a passenger based solely on appearances, would face the consequences. She told herself that the moment she set foot on the ground, the truth would come to light, and these people would be held accountable for their actions. When the plane landed, Amara sat in silence, waiting. Even though the cuffs left painful marks on her wrists, she kept a calm demeanor, knowing that every moment of humiliation was merely the precursor to what she would do next. As the passengers started to rise to gather their belongings, Sophia and Daniel approached her, coldly instructing her to remain seated until everyone else had left the plane. Amara looked at them, saying nothing, keeping a calm gaze, no longer resisting. Her eyes were full of resolve, and her unwavering attitude made Sophia hesitate, though she ultimately followed procedure, telling her to wait. Finally, with only Amara and a few crew members left on board, 2 airport security officers entered, guided by Daniel and Sophia. They escorted her off the plane and led her to the security area. Walking through the airport hallway, Amara felt the eyes of employees and other passengers on her. A composed woman, yet escorted, with cuffs leaving visible marks. But she knew that this shame was only temporary, as within minutes the truth would be revealed. Entering the airline's office at the airport, she saw Thomas Avery, the chief operating officer of Skyflyer, waiting with a face of both shock and tension. Thomas couldn't believe his eyes as he saw Amara, CEO of Skyflyer, brought into the room in a state of exhaustion and disdain. He hurried toward her, stammering in shock. "Ms. Johnson, what happened?" Amara calmly sat across from Thomas, pushing aside her physical and emotional pain to keep her voice sharp and commanding. "Thomas, I just experienced a flight on which our own staff, Sophia and Daniel, disrespected, humiliated, and even handcuffed me as if I were a criminal," she began, her gaze icy as she looked directly at Thomas. "I didn't reveal my identity to test our service, and this is what I received." Thomas's mouth dropped open, horrified as he looked at the marks from the cuffs on Amara's wrists. I don't even know what to say, Ms. Johnson," he stammered. This is unacceptable. Sophia and Daniel, how could they—" "Exactly, how could they?" Amara interrupted, her voice sharp as a blade. "Individuals like Sophia and Daniel represent our brand, yet instead of providing excellent service, they chose to show hostility, prejudice, and injustice. This is not the value system I built for Skyflyer. If they could disrespect a passenger based on appearance alone, how often does this happen?" Thomas nodded, his face flushed with embarrassment and remorse, hastily writing down Amara's words. "Ms. Johnson, I will address this immediately. Sophia and Daniel will be suspended, and we'll launch an investigation right away. I promise. Thomas, Amara cut him off, her tone authoritative and firm. I don't need promises, I need action. I want Sophia and Daniel terminated immediately, not just suspended. And I want their conduct recorded so that any future employer knows exactly what they did. Thomas nodded, his face pale, quickly jotting down Amara's demands. Yes, Ms. Johnson. I will do so immediately, and I will initiate a full investigation to ensure incidents like this will never happen again. Amara regarded Thomas for a moment, assessing the sincerity in his eyes. She understood that he was truly shocked by what had happened, but she didn't allow herself to soften. Too much had been betrayed on that flight. Not only her trust in her staff, but also the core values of the airline she had dedicated her life to building. I want to speak to these individuals, Sophia, Daniel, and Captain Mike. They need to face the consequences directly from me. Thomas swallowed, his expression increasingly anxious but still nodding, knowing that this was unavoidable. Yes, I'll arrange it right away. Within minutes, Sophia, Daniel, and Captain Mike were brought into a small conference room. When they saw Amara sitting there, all three were struck speechless, their faces filled with fear and astonishment. Sophia paled, her eyes wide with the sudden realization that the woman they had mistreated and humiliated on the flight was the CEO of Skyflyer. Daniel swallowed hard, his eyes darting around as if struggling to believe the scene before him. Even Mike, usually composed, now wore a look of deep concern. Amara sat in silence for a moment, letting the heavy quiet settle over the room. Then she spoke, her voice cold and sharp, as if delivering a predetermined sentence. You know who I am, don't you? I'm Amara Johnson, CEO of Skyflyer, and what you did today is unforgivable. Sophia looked down, unable to meet her gaze, while Daniel and Mike stood in silence, none of them daring to speak. On today's flight, Amara continued, you treated me, a customer, as if I were worthless. I don't need to be CEO to deserve basic respect, but you denied even that. Did you think you had the right to humiliate someone just because they didn't look a certain way? The three of them remained silent, their faces displaying regret and fear. Mike attempted to speak, his voice trembling. Ms. Johnson, if I had known... Don't tell me you would have acted differently if you knew who I was. Amara cut him off, her voice dripping with disdain. Because no matter who I am, every customer deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. But today, you chose to demean me and anyone else who doesn't fit your standards. She stood up, looking each of them in the eyes. From this moment, you are no longer employees of Skyflyer, and I will ensure that your records reflect this incident. No company should ever hire individuals who treat others with such contempt. Sophia began to cry, while Daniel lowered his head and Mike remained silent, unable to utter a word. With an air of unyielding authority, Amara turned and left the room, her heart heavy yet filled with determination. Amara's mission was now clearer than ever, to rebuild Skyflyer's service culture and restore the values she had spent her life nurturing and protecting. Walking away from the conference room, where she left Sophia, Daniel, and Captain Mike, she felt the weight of the decision she was about to make. Firing these individuals was only the first step. To restore Skyflyer's reputation and values, she needed a thorough, sweeping reform. Immediately, Amara summoned the airline's legal team to the office. The lawyers arrived quickly, their faces tense, understanding the urgency of the meeting. Once everyone was seated, Amara looked at each of them and began with a resolute tone. I want all of their actions, Sophia's, Daniel's, and Mike's, fully documented with every detail. This isn't just about a service violation, it's about our ethical responsibility to our customers. If any of their actions prove illegal, I want them held criminally accountable. The lawyers nodded, their expressions conveying empathy and determination. One lawyer hesitated, then spoke up. Ms. Johnson, should we consider making this incident public to restore public confidence? I believe it will be necessary to uphold Skyflyer's integrity. Amara paused for a moment, then nodded, her eyes shining with resolve. Yes, we will go public with this. Customers need to know that Skyflyer does not tolerate injustice or disrespect. That's the commitment I want to make to every passenger who has trusted us. She understood that going public could spark a media storm, but Amara wasn't afraid. If transparency and a commitment to fairness could restore customer trust, she was prepared to face any challenge. She immediately held an emergency meeting with Skyflyer's entire executive team via video call. Despite the late hour, every team member was present, their faces showing concern and tension after learning that their CEO had endured unprecedented humiliation on one of their flights. Amara recounted the entire incident, her tone unyielding and resolute. She emphasized, "This is not just the fault of a few individuals, but a warning sign of a deeper problem in our service culture. If Skyflyer employees can treat passengers with disrespect, even to the point of humiliation and mistreatment, we have failed to instill our company's core values." A heavy silence filled the meeting. Each person recognized the gravity of the issue that Amara was addressing. One executive, the head of human resources, unable to hide his embarrassment, lowered his head and spoke apologetically. "I apologize, Ms. Johnson. This is our failure. I will immediately review and improve our training processes to ensure every employee understands and practices the values of respect and professionalism." Amara nodded, though her voice remained firm. "This is not just about retraining. This must be a comprehensive overhaul of Skyflyer's internal culture. I want a regular monitoring process to seriously assess employee attitudes. Anyone who displays even the slightest sign of unprofessionalism will have to leave. Skyflyer cannot tolerate anyone who disrespects our customers, no matter who they are." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the screen where each executive looked back at her with respect and concern. "I will personally oversee these changes. From today, we must rebuild Skyflyer on the foundation of respect, fairness, and dedication to every passenger. This is not just my responsibility, but that of the entire management system." After the intense meeting, Amara didn't go home to rest, but immediately drafted a press release, deciding to publicly address the situation with candor and sincerity. In the statement, she detailed the events, condemning the staff's disrespectful behavior, and pledging that Skyflyer would undergo a thorough transformation to ensure every passenger is treated with absolute respect. Amara's commitment was more than an apology. It was a strong statement of the airline's new direction. The release was sent out early the next morning and quickly spread across news sites and social media. The incident sparked significant public interest. Some were critical, but the majority of the public showed support, especially those who had experienced a lack of respect when flying. Amara's transparency and Skyflyer's commitment to comprehensive reform struck a chord with many. Forums, social media pages, and news outlets were flooded with comments, with people sharing their own experiences, expressing encouragement, and supporting Amara's firm stance. In her office, Amara sat at her desk, quietly reading responses from customers, consumer protection organizations, and airline industry colleagues. She knew that reform would require more than a promise. It would need consistent oversight, adjustment, and strict control over the long term. But for Amara, each note of encouragement from customers became a powerful motivator to stay true to her mission. In the days that followed, Amara devoted all her time to the reform efforts. She worked directly with senior directors to create a new code of conduct, launched an intensive customer service training program, emphasizing fairness, respect, and empathy, and tightened monitoring procedures. Regular customer surveys were scheduled to ensure satisfaction and fairness. Employees who didn't meet standards were let go, and Skyflyer retained only those who genuinely understood and committed to the company's values. Amara felt that this reform was not just about restoring reputation, but also about driving meaningful, lasting change within the airline industry. She knew it would take time and effort, but she was undeterred. Under her leadership, Skyflyer would become a place where every passenger was respected and valued, not only for the quality of service, but also for the human, fair attitude. On a routine inspection at the airport, Amara was unexpectedly recognized and thanked by a group of passengers. An elderly woman took Amara's hand and said to her with heartfelt emotion, "Thank you for standing up and bringing about this change. I used to feel overlooked when flying, but now Skyflyer is truly an airline where everyone is respected." The passengers' heartfelt thanks made Amara feel that every hardship and challenge she had faced was worth it. She realized that Skyflyer was not just an airline, but a place where she had revived trust and fairness in service. In each grateful look and satisfied smile from passengers, she saw the brand she had worked so hard to build come back to life. But Amara did not stop there. She actively participated in industry forums and conferences to share her experiences and reform processes. She encouraged colleagues in the industry to implement similar measures to improve service quality and eliminate disrespectful, unfair practices throughout the airline sector. The lesson from that flight had not only changed Skyflyer's internal culture, but had also sparked a movement within the industry, spreading the values she had established. Returning to her office after a long day, Amara sat by the window, looking out at the vast sky where Skyflyer planes were soaring high. She felt deeply that her resolve and determination had been rewarded. In her heart, Amara knew that her journey with Skyflyer would still face many challenges, but she was ready. To her, every flight was not just a journey connecting destinations, but a symbol of fairness and compassion. Values that would forever be the guiding principles of everything Skyflyer stood for. As the city lights below began to glow, Amara smiled, knowing she had led Skyflyer into a new era. An era of respect, fairness, and pride that every passenger would feel in every moment of their journey. And with a heart full of faith and determination, Amara closed one chapter and began the next, where Skyflyer was not just an airline, but a place where everyone was treated with dignity and kindness. Amara's story is not only about the journey of rebuilding an airline, but also a profound lesson on the value of fairness, empathy, and respect. From her painful experience on her own flight, Amara turned adversity into an opportunity to create a lasting service culture, where every customer is treated with dignity and respect. Under her leadership, Skyflyer has become a symbol of positive change, inspiring us all about the power of perseverance and determination. If Amara's story has inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay tuned for more meaningful stories about courage, innovation, and journeys of change. Let's work together to spread positive values and build a community full of love and respect.